And this is coming directly from the bishop.
Well, she can stay through.
In the spring of 1985, our youngest child, just 9 years old, exhibited symptoms that our pediatrician suggested were probably benign, could portend the existence of a serious life-threatening illness. The diagnosis was to take place in Hanover, New Hampshire, at Dartmouth-Hitchcock. X-rays were taken, holding his daughter's hand tightly, while fearfully awaiting word of her diagnosis. Father Michael this timing is impeccable. And people were staring at that. Father Michael made a promise to God. God, if you spare our child, I will find a way to repay you. The x-rays revealed no illness and our daughter's life was spared. A year later, while returning from an evening teaching in Hanover, Michael vowed, he remembered, he vowed to God. Contemplating his promise, he stared into the night sky, spotted a single bright star. He remembered his mom having told him as a child that if one were to wish upon a star, their wishes would come true. Within a month, Michael joined with other community members and formed First Star Tonight, a charitable organization committed to fulfilling the wishes of Plymouth and Pemmy-Baker Valley area chronically and terminally ill children, young adults, and their families. 2 weeks ago, approximately today, right in this very room, the 30th year celebration of that event took place, and Michael was a young guest. In the fall of 2016, 30 years later, wife Ren suggested to Michael that our family consider offering a scholarship in perpetuity to a Plymouth State University student. The discussion quickly turned to finances and our questionable ability to support a Plymouth State student while needing to contribute to the future education of our grandchildren. Wondering about wife Ren's suggestion, Michael asked, if we were to offer a scholarship, what would your criteria for providing assistance be? Ren responded, I would offer support to a PSU student struggling to cope with a chronic or terminally ill condition. What about the need to support our family? Michael questioned. Ren said, and this will tell you something about the soul of the family. Ren said, no problem. Each year, our family will just be larger by the addition of one more child. I'm very pleased to announce that as a result of you folks coming to celebrate a man and a family who have done so much for a university, for its students, and for a larger community, that just through this event, $3,500 toward that scholarship has already been raised. Thank you very much. A cherished mentor, a community-minded citizen, a large heart. We felt a thank you would be in order before we poke fun, because we're going to do fun that. A thank you because without him there would be no counseling center, nor would thousands of students have gotten the support they needed to persist and succeed. Without him, strides in campus diversity and our elevated discourse on multiculturalism wouldn't be what it is today. Without his influence, the very culture of the campus wouldn't be the same. John commented aptly how so many of us benefited from his wise counsel to better serve students, and how consistently he reminded us that our mission is students and to always work toward continuous improvement on their behalf. So before we turn to fun, would our honoree, who made all this possible, please rise and accept our deepest gratitude. Mike. Sit down, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the grandfather of student services at Plymouth State College and Plymouth State University. The man who came all the way from Pueblo, Colorado. Where he's a man who hired who supervised Mike and who took him to the woodshed many times. Who took a great risk. And without his counsel, so Jim, thank you very much.
I still think it should have been Mike.
And Jim, I think, Jim, you wanted to say a couple of words. Is it all right to do that now?
I don't have just a couple. I'm like you, Dick. When I start in, I can't stop.
You all set?
You want me to say something?
That's something.
This guy is my mentor, he's Michael's mentor, we love him. He has.
Yes.
Thank you, Dick. You're tough. That's terrible. Michael, that's terrible. You ought to be ashamed. I can't do that. I can't make fun of my dear friend. When Frank Fischler called me and told me that on April 22nd, his colleagues were going to be honoring Dr. Michael Fischler. Before the night was over, my son Kelly had us tickets to come out to this event. I'm sorry, Mike. You're too good a man. I can't stand up here and make fun of you. I got to take you back 47 years. 47 years to the summer of 1969. That's the summer I arrived on campus at Plymouth State College as a new dean of students, replacing Ben Hartman, who died a tragic death. I arrived with my wife Fran, my 5 kids, and my brand new Volkswagen convertible. Mike Fischler arrived that same summer. He arrived with his beautiful wife, Ray. He arrived, I think, in one of those famous car purchases he used to make. I think it was a Volvo, and it lasted almost a year before he had to jump. He was something else. We bonded immediately because we both had earned our doctorates from the University of Colorado in the same discipline, counseling and government. The other thing, perhaps more importantly, was Mike and my wife Fran were both musicians. Mike was a superb guitarist. We always referred to him as our Sonny Bono. Some of you remember Cher's husband. He was a hippie guitarist of the 60s, and naturally, Mike reminded us of him. My wife was a pretty successful country western singer, doing all Patsy Cline's stuff. Mike talked her into putting on a show at our first faculty banquet in the fall. Our first faculty banquet. Needless to say, Ren and I had reservations, but we were wrong. It was a great success. Many of the faculty members applauded, and all were very nice. Mike was in 7th heaven. He had a few more drinks during the night. And I'll never forget the final event of that evening, with Dr. Michael Fischler passed out and he's played a national game. How could any student refuse to love that man? They had their own Dr. Showbiz. God bless you, Michael. We love you.
That same faculty dinner, Michael in those days found it difficult to rub two nickels together. But he knew, protocol was to dress up, so we went out in the bus. And, oh, by the way, whatever we say here is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So I'm going to tell the truth. Now, Michael went out and bought a suit, and because he, was on a low salary at that time, he decided what he would do is try to take it back. So he tucked the tag up into the coattail and taped it with Scotch tape. But little did he know that the tape came loose, and all evening he was walking around with that tag. And because of the mashed potatoes that Jim was talking about, Michael had to get the suit dry cleaned. And the dry cleaner was, a little curious, and Michael said, leave the tags on. Mike, I apologize for misleading you before. But I think it's because Mike had asked me just before we got started if he could address you at the beginning. So Michael, please feel free to come on up.
I've noticed a lot of people are not here tonight. At least Hayes and Miller showed up. Ladies, gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, my dear, talented, intelligent, stunningly beautiful, sexy daughter Valerie. My handsome, brilliant, well-dressed, charismatic, dynamic, exceptionally brilliant, handsome son, in-law, Rodney. Mark. And my rock, my leader, my conscience and model for all things right. The woman who has guided me through the darkest times and danced with me in the lightest moments, who in moments of deficit lead me to unending bounty. Nicole. Am I forgetting anyone? Ren, do you see my glasses? In the deep winter of 1949, fresh out of completing my PhD from the Boulder School of Kids That Can't Talk Good, I set out to visit a small town in New Hampshire. There was a job opening via government initiative for PhD graduates who passed with a 1.8 GPA and generally lacked talent. I immediately applied. I knew that I probably wouldn't qualify, but it was my only chance to get out of the restaurant industry. Upon arriving to Plymouth, I knew that this idyllic mecca of sunshine and warmth would be home. And as you can imagine, my beautiful wife from Paris and Miami was overjoyed. She could barely contain herself. Literally, she could barely contain her breasts. And the local men at the shop and save could barely contain themselves. Through my long, exhaustingly long, and never-ending career at PSU, I have found that it's not what I have taught, but what I have learned that's been one of the most satisfying aspects of my life. As any professor knows, it is not so much our colleagues and associates that teach us, but our students. Mostly I have made it my life's work to get to know each one of them and ask the most essential question of their time here. Do you know who I am? It touches my heart so deeply when an enthusiastic student approaches me to say, "Hello, Dr. Fischler," and I reply, "Hey." Good to see ya. Ren, who the hell is that? Mike, how should I know? They're your students. Many times they have graced me with unending praise, which touches my heart and warms my soul. And now I'd like to share with you a meaningful letter that I received from one of my students. Dear Dr. Fischler, I wanted to take some time to write to you and thank you for the severe impact you've had on my life. You've had such a unique style of teaching, truly wear your heart on your sleeve. And you were the first professor to say fuck in a class.
So true. Yes.
One of the most beautiful and impactful lectures you ever gave was 2 years ago in your multicultural diversity class. We started with a talk with some slides, and we're talking about the famous Buddhist story about the apple and a man with a hood, and how eating an apple and wearing a hood can create dissension among those of the most marginalized. And then as you started to cry, the screen behind you portrayed the most painful images I have ever seen. There were images of a very short, pretty lady with braided pigtails who had been attacked, apparently by a dog. And the bite marks were so deep, and the woman in the photos looked like she was in so much pain. It was truly brilliant how you juxtaposed the pain of the lady in the photos with the human condition. And even though it felt inappropriate, it proved that you were indeed very different from any teacher that I had. You have truly changed my life forever. Sincerely, Christy. And so I close by saying this. I'm humbled and honored that you have awarded me with the most prestigious Professor of the Universe award. I am aware that the award has never been given to anyone and never will be again. But I share it with my inspiring students, loving families, esteemed colleagues, and every person out there who barely graduated college, yet managed to build an exceptionally long and fruitful career as an educator. Thank you all very much.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is Rodney Michael Fischler. Rodney. James, is dessert out there yet?
No.
No. We'll go on. It's Bob Lasney, somewhere up here. Bob is a 18-year colleague of Mike, and he came to the counseling center at Plymouth as the clinical director, and since Mike retired from that position, Bob has been the director of counseling at Plymouth State University.
So, at the Michael L. Fischler Counseling Center, as you must know, we, like our namesake, are all about being real, honest, genuine, and true to ourselves. You know, all that touchy-feely, find yourself, self-actualization, personal growth and enlightenment psychobabble crowd. So I wanted to share a very real, authentic, and genuine personal and professional experience I've had with Mike. As I started to prepare for this, I identified a great story, ridiculously funny, and perfect for a roast like this one, and illustrating Mike at his loving, creative, outrageous, and sometimes, yes, even crass, if you hadn't noticed, best. But then in practicing it and listening to myself, I decided, I can't share that. It's too raw and inappropriate. What would people think? So after much consternation, I came up with a second great story and thought, now this is vintage Mike, perfect. So I quickly, enthusiastically shared it with other counseling center staff to get their frank, authentic, genuine feedback. The response went something like, no way, you can't share that. With all Mike's F-bombs and sordid variety of expletives, it's too raw and inappropriate. What would people think? Now I know that I'm a highly trained mental health professional, but am I the only one noticing a pattern here? So finally, I settled on one brief story that I can share. You won't believe this one. As Mike would say, you can't make this crap up. It all started one morning at the counseling center when Mike, forget it, I can't share this. It's too raw and inappropriate. What would people think? The only thing I can share is that Mike is one of the most unique, passionate, genuine, inspirational, warm, and passionate human beings that I've had the privilege to know. And I wish him and Ren the very, very best in their retirement and their future endeavors. And I hope that they touch the lives of many more blessed human beings as they touch mine. have one more thing to share. This is a letter from Angela Urling, who was one of our counselors that worked with us for a few years. And she left us a few years ago. So this is from Angela. The Counseling Center is an amazing place. My awesome colleagues decided to throw a surprise baby shower for me. It was my first, and apparently Mike's first baby shower as well. I opened thoughtful presents that included the more adorable outfits for my little one. There were cute toys, a knitted blanket and booties, and then I opened Mike's present. As I unwrapped the last of the tissue paper, I looked down into the box, only to peer at Mike's smiling face shining up at me with an alcoholic beverage in his hand, as if to offer me a cheers. This lovely picture was framed for my baby's new room. Now, I'm not sure if everyone has seen Mike's sheepish look that he's managed to perfect over the years. But that laugh was the best shower present I ever received. To give Mike full credit, he later followed up with a more traditional gift, a set of ducky rain jacket and boots that my daughter adored and my son is currently wearing. Mike, you broke a few thousand molds, and I'm not even sharing the story of the plastic bear that poops out jelly beans that you gave all us counselors around Christmas. Somehow relating it to a Taoist story, a connection that only you could make with any level of sincerity. Congratulations.
Reality. To know Mike Fischler, to rub shoulders with this great teacher, to experience the intense passion for human decency, to witness his active advocacy for the underdog, to sit in his class as he value challenges his students, to watch him cry and comfort another through loss, to hear his case for diversity and multiculturalism at an international conference. Each and all of these and more is a great lesson. Another reality. Ren, you come up here, please. He said, I'm not saying nothing. And a word. Oh, nice to see you. And a word about sainthood. It's never a secret that behind every accomplishment, every success, are a host of shoulders we stand on. And most often the broadest, strongest of shoulders, the true pillar we derive most of our energy from, is the loyal partner. No one has more so that pillar than you. Ren, you gave Michael your beautiful family. You always display your fierce pride in his good deeds. You frequently counseled the counselor. You cared for him through medical crises. At least he thought they were. You nurture him with French cuisine. You tell him he looks like Sonny Bono, and every time he strums his guitar that he never sounded better. Emphasis on never. You enthusiastically travel the world with him. You love him unconditionally and gently correct his course on occasion. You are the center of his universe. And for all that, you are his most trusted counsel, the one he turns to for nurturance, for wisdom, for moral support, for strength, or love? Please accept these roses in recognition of being Michael's pillar.
I am going on vacation. Across the 50 years. Now you need me. Thank you for this world. My son, beautiful daughter, Nicole, Roger, Nell, Nicole, my beautiful Aurora, and my wonderful Stefan. It's everything. My chérie. God bless. All of them. Thank you to my wonderful friends from near and far. I love you.
Dessert is ready. We'll take about a 5-minute break. And some of you obviously won't have dessert, but then we'll continue the program. But feel free to get for some dessert. If we could get you to take your seats again, we want to get the program started.
Alumni weekend. Yeah, we have a nephew for them. It's great. And I actually have a nephew Wonderful too. Once a week.
Please take your seats. Please take your seats and come back maybe a table at a time for your dessert.
You were here. I got up, went over there, turned around, and
All the way from Colorado, Coley Smith, the son of our great Dean Jim Smith. He wants to say a few words.
Real tough after all. But I know Mike and Red and Mark, and excuse my voice, I've been at a reunion for the last 3 days. But I've known them, it's been like a second family to me. 2 real quick stories. I think the first time I remember meeting Mike, it was over at the Johnson's house, which is now Dick Cage's house. It was at their swimming pool. And if you've ever seen Mike Fischler in a pair of swim trunks, it looked like an episode of Planet of the Apes. I was so scared. We were playing minnows and whales in the pool, where you gotta swim from one side without getting caught. And I remember Mike pulling me up, and I said something to the fact, "Get your filthy paws off me, you animal!" But second story, real quick.
3rd grade.
I had the very privilege of attending a very private ceremony called a bar mitzvah of Mark. And Mike was, of course, a very proud papa. I'm a Catholic boy. I'd never been in a synagogue in my life. I had no idea what I was witnessing. But Mike, I think, saw this, and he came over to me, and I'm thinking, oh, great, Mike's going to share his Jewish wisdom with And he came up to me and he said, "Cully, you know why all Jewish men are circumcised?" I said, "No, Mike." And he said, "Well, it's because Jewish women won't touch anything unless it's at least 10% off." So needless to say, Mike has been my true friend. I've loved him like a dad. And I gotta say one more very, very, this is from my heart, Mike. This is from my heart.
The rest of us.
I spent 20 plus years in the Air Force. My dad was in the Marine Corps. My younger brother has spent 18 years in the Army. My oldest son has spent 16 years in the Army now, and he's currently over in Saudi Arabia. He did 3 tours in Iraq. His best friend was killed in his first tour. He lost 2 men serving under him in his first tour. So I know what experiences like that can mean to a military person. And the fact that Mike has counseled men and women from the military, that means more to me than you can imagine. So, Mike, I love you. Ren, I love you. Thank you.
From 1995 to 1997, Jay Moskowitz was Mike's graduate assistant. And then a year after that, for a total of 3, I guess, years, Jay was his teaching assistant. Jay would like to say something about that experience.
I guess I'd like to start off by saying, Ren, you're not the only one he needs. I thought, I'm not sure it was such a good idea to come up here, but there are at least 3 or 4 others in the audience who will understand what I'm going to say. And I thought, what should I say? Because it really wasn't a funny experience. It was all dissonance. And, right? And so I thought, what should I talk about? Well, I'll talk about my experience with Michael. And in those days, Michael and I taught 200 students per semester. We had 200 students per semester. I did 3 years with Michael. So I did 1,200 students with Michael. Now, if there's 1,200 students, and you have about 4 major written assignments during the course of the semester, that's like 4,800 papers. Now, if each paper is about 5 pages long, that's about 24,000 papers over the course of 3 years. 24,000 pages that needed to be graded, that needed to be read. The grade needed to be submitted into the book so that everything was, all the administration was taken care of. Who did all that, Michael? You can relieve yourself of some of that dissonance by giving us a public sort of confession. Who did see it all. You know what? I think that's all I'm going to say.
This evening we speak the truth, the whole truth. Character. Among the many things I appreciate most about the professional side of it, for that matter, is life, his entire being. This is deep caring for others. Whenever there was a student in crisis, no matter where, or what time of night or on a weekend, there was Mike. And was always the same, away from work, as many of you can testify. That character is cast in a great legacy in two shining examples of the Fischler family style of caring. To save our student scholarship being one, First Star tonight being another, both the brainchild of Mike and his family. Examples for all of kindness and caring. And tonight, we also celebrate the extension of that scholarship. That's character. Thank you, Mike. But more on character. More on Michael's character. Some years back, Ren and Mike and Pat and I went for a weekend stay at Manoir Hubby in North Hatley, Quebec, on Lake Massawippi. If you haven't been there, you owe it to yourself. A 5-star, Roberge, the best gourmet food, gorgeous setting, exquisite service and hospitality, the finest welcome that people will ever meet. If you aren't aware, Mike is a bargain hunter. Even though Manoir Hubby's rates are pretty handsome, Mike found a way to trim costs. When asked by the waiter if we'd like wine, Mike, without consultation from the rest of us, ordered the cheapest on the list. Once the wine was served, Mike instructed us not to empty our glasses beyond halfway. When any of us reached that point, Mike would grab our glass, hold it under the table, remove one of the 2 smoking bottles, to our utter surprise, and top off our wine with something that likes the wild Irish rose. Though the rest of us were duly embarrassed, all seemed to escape management's notice until we finished, and Mike lavished praise on the waiter, on his wonderful service, while facing him with one clean pant leg and the other stained red, as an empty bottle slipped from the sleeve. Nothing but the truth. Still more on its character. Speaking of Dean Smith earlier, Jim was holding a retreat with department heads and student leaders to hear their feedback on our services. Peter Otis, who was here tonight. Welcome, Peter. At the time, Director of Career Services, responded to a student's request for more job placement support. Peter agreed, but worried aloud about his ability to deliver, given that he was only a one-person office. Our beloved, rest her soul, wonderful woman, Dean Patricia Storr, the ultimate in grace and respectfulness, responded encouragingly to the students and to Peter, saying, "We'd all like to have 3 Peters." Well, good Lord, you can hear the silence that followed as every male in the room looked down at their notes, not daring eye contact with another male, praying for personal control. Well, just as it appeared we'd gotten through it and regained composure, as Dean Storr continued her supportive comments, a full 2 minutes later, Fischler yells out, "3 Peters, that's a good one, Pat!" Our students were in shock, along with the rest of us. Dean Storr's jaw dropped. Fischler was hee-hawing and slapping a colleague on the back. Nothing but the truth. And another type of character altogether. Mike loves to shop. He and Ren were at the Mall of New Hampshire. They each went their own way and agreed to meet at a kiosk at high noon during the height of pedestrian traffic on a Saturday before Hanukkah. Ren arrived at the kiosk first. and then she spotted him. Sauntering along, pleasantly smiling and greeting all passersby, even though they were giving him strange looks, as he was dragging from his heel a train of toilet paper. And his boxer shorts were sticking out above his belt, about halfway up his belly. High noon, Mullet, New Hampshire, height of the holiday season. You can't make this stuff up. One of our wonderful alums, Laura Sandillo. Where are you, Laura? A member of Talmadge sorority, a student leader, a wonderful person. And Michael happened to, at the time, be the advisor to Talmadge.
For a while.
Yeah.
So on April 11th, 2017, the Talmadge sorority celebrated its 50th anniversary of sisterhood. And to my knowledge, we remain the oldest active Greek organization on campus. I think it was 1973, Mike and his lovely wife, Ren, decided to take us on. And the prior advisor, you see, she took off 6 years into it. But when you think about it, it's pretty progressive for that time to have a male advisor for a female organization. Then again, our colors are blue and light blue, so. There's no question that Dr. Fischler has been unwavering support through the years, has allowed us to remain an active organization on campus. Nothing phases this man, which is a wonderful trait if you're going to be a Greek organization advisor. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when the sisters in the later 70s had to explain to him why they felt the need to break into President Casper Markey's house to make him breakfast. That's a true story. You can't make that one up either. He came down the stairs in his underwear and was quite surprised. Dean Smith had to deal with that. The sisters asked me to convey their most memorable times with the Fischlers, and that would be Thanksgiving dinners and sing-alongs at the house. We still all didn't know the words to Matilda, and we still shed a tear when we hear I'm leaving on a jet plane. On a personal note, I will always be grateful to Dr. Fischler, along with Dean Hayes and Dean Smith, for the role they played in developing my leadership skills while I was at Plymouth. You will always hold a special place in my heart. Talmadge has a tradition called floating boats. When you're a graduating senior, your little sister makes you a boat, and in the middle of the night, the active sisters will kidnap you and bring you over to Smith Bridge. Then you place your boat in the river. If it floats away, it means that you'll never be around. If it stays close to shore, it means you'll always be around. You'll always be present. Many of the graduating seniors would try to hide that night because they knew that that meant saying goodbye. Well, we couldn't figure out a way to kidnap you in the middle of the night. So we couldn't keep that tradition. But whether your boat would have floated away or stayed close to shore, it wouldn't have mattered because you will always remain close in our hearts. So we couldn't make you a boat, but we have a gift for you.
Bend over.
At that same lunch when John Fletcher and I were together, John reminded me of another one of Jim Smith's meetings. It went like this. Dean Smith was addressing his staff at an early September meeting expressing thankfulness that fall move-in ran so smoothly. John Clark, sitting right beside Mike, knocked on the conference table, thankful along with Jim. Mike, with his attention apparently elsewhere, got up to answer the door. Curiously, Jim looked at Mike and went on to report that the football player who got carried off the field in a stretcher in Saturday's opening game, turns out was no serious injury. John knocked on wood. Mike opened the door. Jim shook his head, then thanked the activities staff for their homecoming plan of events and wished everyone well in avoiding the repeat of last year's rowdy behavior. John knocked on wood. Mike opened the door. Jim, smiling toward Mike, was pleased to let us know our choice candidate for the chief of campus safety position accepted our offer. John was delighted, so he knocked on wood. Mike hurried to the door. Still no one there, so Mike moved his chair closer to the door. Finally, Jim reported that a proposal to bring trio programs to campus received approval. John knocked on wood. Mike snapped from his chair, sprang to the door, ripped it open, turned, and said, "Whoever's jerking with us is fast." In 1975, Peter Otis joined the staff, and at the time he came as the Director of Career Services, I mentioned earlier. He went on to be the Director of Human Resources. Peter would like to share something.
That comes later.
It's such a treat to be back here. Let's get this thing going. Hello, bonsoir, Madame Artiste. My newest Facebook friend as of yesterday. Mark, who I just saw, the wonderful interview with you. Congratulations. Oh man, this is just what your family, Mike. And there's probably something you've accomplished too, somewhere along the way. Jim Smith brought me, as you've heard, in '75 to Plymouth. I'd been up in Vermont, and one of the words, I think this is related, I had to do some personal counseling at one point, working with students, and I went to one of the residence halls because they were really a lot of trashing, a lot of drinking, etc. And one of the guys sitting in the corner said, "Mr. Counselor, do you know what the first 4 letters of analyst are?" That's how respectful. So I'm so glad that you got to do all of this stuff instead of me. So I did the career thing for years. By the way, my wife Bobby and all of our 3 kids, Casey, Jake, and Anna, send their best greetings to your whole family. Wish they could have been with us. Today's Earth Day. Next week there's a big science and a big march for the climate and all our issues and all these issues. But my march was coming up. Thank you, Ren, for inviting me, and Dick for inviting me to be here to honor Michael this evening. These are just some random thoughts while I was picking carrots in our garden in Connecticut with our 6-year-old grandson Miles. And my perspective is as a PSC diaspora member. I left here in '84. Jim interviewed me in '75. And I was so fortunate, I became really good friends with a guy who worked at the University of Massachusetts. And Clark Edwards always used to say, "Peter, Jim Smith gave me 2 weeks, only 2 weeks from the time he interviewed me to get my whole family and everything here." He said, "I can't do it." So it was nice to be able to be the bridesmaid and actually be hired to come to be working with you and all our crew. Dick, John Clark, Chuck Bailey, all this crew there were some of the early ones here. The key thing, and we've heard this over and over, is the student services piece. I was so devoted to the students. Jim, Michael, Dick, all of us were the same way. And even when I retired from Yale 4 years ago, And they asked me, what do you want to do for, as recognition? We could have had something like this. I said, all I want to do is do something with the students. We had a big gathering, and that was the key thing. It was just being with students, and you've devoted yourself to them. So Dr. Fischler, Michael, Dr. Showbiz, did you bring your guitar tonight?
You don't want to ask.
Yes. Yes.
So our son Jake apparently must have heard you singing, I don't know if it's Matilda, one of those things, but at any rate, he tried playing the guitar for a number of years. And he couldn't get much further than Free Fallin' with Tom Petty, but somehow it was Mike Fischler somehow influenced him enough to even pick up the guitar. Are you going to get some Grammys? Has he gotten any Grammys yet for all his performances? Now that you're retired, maybe you can do more of that.
You got a grandpa.
Oh, Grandpa, that's right. So let me set this down just for a second. I got to bounce over. Yes. Over to Facebook. So I had a chance to look at your Facebook page. It was this most wonderful piece that was written by Valerie. I'm sorry she's here, I've already told her this. December 9th, 2015. See this guy in the middle hanging with his buddies, James and Jean? And it goes on to tell about Michael. On all of her memories. I was a wee child who would get a call from the college at 2 a.m. as director of the counseling center. A student who was suicidal, a student who has been arrested, a student who was gay or an African American and felt isolated and fearful in our tiny New England town trying to find their way. My dad was the one who was there, helping those whom had not developed their own voices yet in this complex, crazy world we live in, and on and on. And I think it's one of the most beautiful letters that I've seen a daughter write to her father. And so I wanted to say, hi, Michael. In 1979, which was my 4th year, I had 3 eye operations in 4 months. It was really tough, and I was really down. And 2 really cool things happened that time. Students, we went to the gymnasium, and the conning tower, is it still called that? The yearbook? Was dedicated to me, and that was the most meaningful acknowledgement that I've ever had in my life, and it was coming directly from the students. But the other thing that was really cool was we got a knock on our door one day, and Michael was at the door. And he was expressing, sympathy, concern, everything else that we were so appreciative about. So Mike, could you come up, please? There's another presentation for you and my good friend. So, try to hold all of these. So anyway, he came to the door. I love you so much. Great to be with him again. So this is for you. This is just a little something. This is a little something back to you after what he brought to us back in '79. He does love to kiss, and so do I. It's not a paddle. And this is not the same one that he brought in '79. For your thoughtfulness, Ren, Mark, Valerie, what a wonderful family. So congratulations. I love you too. So anyway, I'm going to finish up with one more quote. So, Mike, I hope that you will now pick up that guitar, and really, I want to see your name in the Grammys coming in the future. And then Ren, here's a quote from Ren. Drive German. Dress Italian. Drink Scotch. Kiss French.
Jim Smith from the great staff together.
Yes. Great job, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. There are 2 types of hospitality in the Fischler home. Ren's and Mike's. Ren graciously invited Jim and Fran and Pat and me to a surprise birthday dinner for Michael. It was our first time at the Fischler home. We all got there about 6 p.m. By 7:30, fish hadn't arrived. Ren, 8.5 months pregnant with Valerie, had gone above and beyond in preparation, and though remaining gracious, was beginning to lose patience. Finally, a tad before 8 o'clock, in strolls the prince, all aglow and abundantly happy, apparently having gone to the filling station with his grad students. Ren had a quiet word with him, the birthday boy, in the kitchen, and proceeded to lavish the table with the most beautifully golden roasted chicken and scrumptious sides I've ever seen. Mike was seated opposite me, where the carving utensils were placed. Ren suggested she swap places with Mike so she could do the carving. We understood the hidden meaning, but overly happy Mike, wielding the long knife, thrust the fork into the bird, sending it and most of the juice into my lap. Following some choice French from Ren, Mike casually walked around the table to lift the bird back onto the platter. But the leg came off in his hand and the bird dropped back into my lap. Another larger splash. Mike, now with a drumstick in his mouth, said, mumbled, "Stay there." I was going anywhere. He retreated to the kitchen, returned with a pot, told Ren the chicken was delicious, got down on his knees, half under the table, placed the pot in front of my lap, and slid the bird into it. There was another audible thud, after which Mike returned the chicken to the table and began carving as if nothing happened. You can't make this up. Where's Matt?
That's right here.
Oh, Matt, you moved. Matt Curtis was one of Michael's graduate assistants.
Thank you. Good evening. I had the immense fortune of crossing paths with Michael Fischler early in my graduate education. He has been a source of wisdom and support now for a couple of decades. In the earlier stages of our relationship, formative conversations with Mike would extend late into the night. He was caring, wise, alert, and remained fully clothed. Thankfully, similar conversations continue to this day, but they usually wrap up around 9 or about 30 minutes after Mike, clad in boxer shorts and a dirty wife beater, has all but passed out after consuming 2 glasses of wine and drooling a couple of tablespoons of saliva. Throughout, Mike's teachings and long-term mentoring have been nothing short of life-altering. He taught me innumerable lessons of great import. I would like to share a few of the more formative with you this evening. Number 1, act as if. One of the first things to strike me about Mike was his apparent strength of confidence. I stress apparent. He spoke with authority and presented an aura of unflappable composure. Mike is one of those rare, enlightened gurus who readily proffers advice on a dizzying number of issues, ranging from interpersonal relations to penny stocks, organizational theory to generic beers, and human development to all-inclusive vacations. I remember walking nervously from Memorial Hall to Hyde Hall with Mike for my first class. As I was struggling with a backpack, a large box of materials, and a coffee, Mike was sauntering along in what I came to learn was his standard class outfit. A charcoal suit from Target's long-abandoned Don Johnson line, accompanied by a black t-shirt and 20-year-old scuffed-up loafers. He was amped up for the beginning of class, a process he lives for. He looked something like a fighter entering the ring and a politician in the midst of a parade. He was grinning from ear to ear and occasionally waving to students, pointing fingers here and there. Now, as I was observing from the vantage point of Mike's wingman, I noticed that many of the students that Mike believed were acknowledging him were actually communicating with other students that were above and or beyond Mike's peripheral vision. When Mike saw a student gleefully waving or quivering with anticipation, as often happens with undergraduates as they advance on greens and quads across the country to commence the first day of classes, Mike inaccurately presumed the waves and other demonstrative presentations were meant for him. This, of course, is a brilliant strategy, and one that would enable us all to feel like rock stars on a much more regular basis. Now, arriving at class, I saw Mike kick things off like a mega-church pastor, only to wind things down an hour or so later by taking off his scuffed-up loafers and socks in order to get more comfortable. I was thoroughly impressed. Later in the semester, I actually witnessed him play some tunes on his guitar for the students after casually letting slip that he had once been known as the gangster of love. The man was shameless. Now, some may prefer to describe such instances as quixotic delusions of grandeur. I see them as the effective strategies of a compassionate honey badger, or a Chuck Norris-influenced progressive change agent. As Wayne Dyer wrote, "You will see it when you believe it." Mike is a shining example of the power of such approaches. Second lesson, language is tricky and enlightenment is ironic. Mike was an advocate of the Zen-inspired notion of the don't know mind. Initially, I found this concept extremely confusing. We want to know, we think we know, we're supposed to know, there's a strong bias towards knowing, but we can't really know. As Mike often reminded, reality is as reality is perceived. On the other hand, there were many times that it was quite clear that Mike believed that he himself had obtained some truth with a capital T. Now, in these cases, Mike understood what was right and wrong, and the students, myself, and everyone else was responsible for recognizing as much and thinking and behaving accordingly. Mike constantly referred to this as being part of the process. Now, after countless hours of debriefing, after-action reviews, chanting, meditative exercises, therapeutic interventions, and the like with Mike, I feared I was no further along the path of enlightenment than when I had originally started. I was utterly befuddled about when to know and when to not know. Furthermore, it seemed inescapable that the more we learned, the less I could know. I found myself desperately yearning for the clear-cut Catholic guilt and concrete dualism that had characterized my earlier stages of development. Going to work seemed like going to tea with Yoda, or engaging in a never-ending spiritual equivalent of Albert and Costello's "Who's on First" routine. It was exhausting. I often found myself wondering whether or not it was truly best to kill the Buddha you had met on the road, as one of the books that I was reading at the time instructed. Thankfully, I did not. Mike continued to support me in trying, without really trying, of course, to make the muddy water clear. Whew. Wow. Well, I still like to think the process paid off in some way. The third and final lesson, for brevity's sake, is that educational technology is a powerful educational tool when harnessed properly. Now, it was approximately halfway through the first semester of working with Mike before I came to fully realize that I was working with a maestro of the highest order. The classroom we worked in had just been provided with a state-of-the-art, technologically advanced instructional assistant device that looked like it could have served as the motherboard of Star Trek Starship Enterprise. Now, given the technological savvy of Mike and I, this was somewhat analogous to giving a chalkboard to cavemen. Mike, however, remained unabashed about tapping this new toy for all he could, and he regularly attempted to integrate it into his class presentations. He had just wrapped up one of those vibrant, profound, technologically assisted lectures that once led a drunken student to conclude, Mike Fischler must soar like a bird because he sees everything. When Mike uncharacteristically departed the class during class time. Now, as he strutted out of the room, shooting smiles, pointing fingers, and nodding his head at numerous students, we were left to discuss Mike's presentation in his absence. Several minutes into doing so, strange noises started to spill out of the huge speakers in the room and reverberate around the cavernous expanse of the lecture hall. It sounded like a fire hose had been wedged into an aluminum phone booth. Soon after, it sounded as though a pack of gaseous, ravenous warthogs had joined the fire hose in the phone booth. After several seconds of utter bewilderment, I realized that Mike had taken the lapel microphone, and hence the motherboard and us, with him on his bathroom excursion. I bolted to the motherboard in a desperate attempt to cut the audio, return a semblance of normalcy to the class, and hopefully preserve some of the small reputation that Mike had left. My spasmodic bumbling, however, only served to increase the volume. And a surreal resounding of bodily emissions ensued. The apparent sound of urination conjured up images of and sympathy for those krill and other small sea life that tragically find themselves in too close proximity to a well-hydrated whale's urethra at the wrong time. The cacophony of sound seemed to include a Big Mac truck burning rubber, a fleet full of sails in a hurricane, and about 1,000 overly ripe watermelons hitting the sidewalk after having been thrown from the roof of a tall building. As guttural grunts of relief entered the room, I finally managed to pull the plug on the motherboard and bring the burlesque orchestra to a close. The students appeared as exhausted as Mike must have been, albeit not nearly as satisfied. After an extended period of horrified silence, one of the students seated in the back of the lecture hall, who rarely spoke in class, loudly exclaimed, "Poor Dr. Fischler, or should we call him the Big Noisy? When you got 100 monkeys trying to scrape their way out of your colon like that, it's bound to leave racing stripes and tear balls." The remaining 150 or so of us simply sat in stunned silence. A few minutes later, Mike broke the silence by re-entering the room and striding Gangster of Love style, just as he had, to the front. The students, however, did not respond to the smiles, head bobbing, and finger pointing with the same vibrancy and vigor that they had earlier. Their eyes were focused on the microphone and its accustomed resting place on the lapel of Mike's charcoal Don Johnson suit. Their faces were taut and pale, and their postures stiff. Clearly, Mike had once again edified his students in ways that even the best professors never shall. Now, closing, and in all seriousness, prior to meeting Mike, I had struggled throughout my life to take full advantage of the opportunities that education had presented. And I had proven unwilling, and perhaps unable, to negotiate bureaucratic briar patches and thrive within organizational confines. I'm reminded of a Native American elder who spoke of his own inner struggles as follows. Inside of me, there are two dogs, he said. One of the dogs is stubborn, nasty, and evil. The other dog is good. The mean dog fights the good dog all the time. When asked which dog wins, he reflected for a moment, and then he replied, the one that I feed the most. Michael Fischler fueled my good dog. No other teacher has ever provided such nourishment. Mike encouraged me to take control of my own learning. He inspired and guided, but he left me the heavy lifting. He refined my crap detector and led me to rethink my worldview by drawing me out of myself while kindly scaffolding my ignorance and empathizing with my immaturity. A part of me is saddened to realize that Plymouth State students will soon no longer be able to interact with and learn from Mike as readily as they once were. But I find it apropos that he is going on to explore this new stage of his life. As the Tao Te Ching, one of the many catalytic works Mike introduced to me, instructs, the world belongs to those who let go. In closing, I want to share a very short poem by Hafiz, a Sufi poet, that reminds me of Mike. It's called Dropping Keys. The small man builds cages for everyone he knows, while the sage, who has to duck his head when the moon is low, keeps dropping keys all night long for the beautiful, rowdy prisoners. Thanks, Mike.